Sometimes I think people get confused with what intention really is.
Okay. So here's my definition of intention. Getting clear on what you want. That's it. So now, sounds really easy, like to get clear on what you want. The problem is that when the analytical mind gets overdriven by the hormones of stress, we start thinking, I want this, but then I need it on this condition, so it can't affect this person, and I don't want to lose that. And if this occurs, then this is going to occur for this, and that's not intention. That's trying to control everything in your life.
Confusion sounds like.
Well, what you're trying to do is say, I want this specific thing, but I'm not willing to lose any of these things or affect any of these people. It's got to land right here. The universe doesn't work like that. Intention is, you may say, I want a healing. I want a new job. I want a new relationship. Now, the moment you ask the question, the what-if question, what would it be like to be in love? What would it be like to have a new job? What would it be like to be in a new relationship, to do whatever, to be healed? The moment you ask that question, the part of your brain called the frontal lobe, which is the crowning achievement of the human being, 40% of your brain is the frontal lobe. It's the workshop. It's the creative center. Frontal lobe has connections to all other parts of your brain. The moment you ask an open-ended question, you speculate a possibility. The creative center turns on and it looks out over the landscape of the entire brain and begins to call up different networks of neurons that are stored in your brain based on something you've learned intellectually, knowledge, or something you've experienced in your life. Like, well, I know what it is to be in love, or I know what it is to have a good job, or I read a book about it. And it begins to call up these different networks of neurons, and then it seamlessly pieces them together to create a new idea, a new vision. And when you put all those networks together and they fire in tandem, you'll get a clear picture in your mind. And that clear picture is called intention. Now, the more you have conditions, or the more you have specifics about that job, like, for example, I want to make this amount of money more a year, I want to have health benefits, I want to have 3 weeks vacation, I want to travel, I want to work with great and unlimited creative people. That all is the elements that help to add to that vision. Now, the picture you get in your mind could be the word job, or it could be just an image that's personal to you. But the image then represents all of those conditions. So you can have several conditions that make up your intention. But the intention typically is a symbol. Like, you may see a retreat center that you may want to start and you have a picture of it. But once you see that picture, the next thing that happens, you start to live that dream. The moment you start to take that dream and it turns into a living motion picture, now you're in that imaginary place. And what happens is, the moment it starts taking on form and it starts taking on time, you start to experience it and all the things you're going to do, you're actually living in that future, and your brain does not know the difference between the actual event that takes place in your life and what you're imagining in your mind. We call it mental rehearsal in my work, but you're literally rewiring yourself to the future. Now your brain is no longer a record of the past. It's now, in fact, a map to the future. Now, most people stop at this level, but there's another level. Because once you have that intention, and I watched you do this, what makes the intention have life is when you combine it with that emotion. Why? Because your body is your unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between an experience in your life that creates an emotion and an emotion that you're fabricating by thought alone. So your body now, as the unconscious mind, is living in that future in the present moment, and you're beginning to epigenetically change your cells in preparation for that event. So then, here's the condition, the caveat. That means then you can't wait for your healing to feel wholeness. You have to feel wholeness for your healing to occur. That means you can't wait for your new relationship to feel love. You have to feel love so your relationship finds you. It means you can't wait to have your new job to feel empowered. You have to be empowered by the thought of your new job. So we're switching the model around because most people wait for something outside of them to change how they feel inside of them. And when they feel better inside of them, they get relief and they say, I like you, you helped me with that. That's cause and effect. That's the old model of reality. What we're talking about here in the quantum model is causing an effect, which means then you are going to have to change how you think and how you feel before the experience occurs in order for the event to find you.
So if someone is looking for love, they're not, instead of looking outside, they're going to think about who and what they want in a person that they can fall in love with.
Exactly.
And
That's
those,
intention.
Right. Okay. So those are the waves that they're putting out. That's the information that they're putting out.
Now, that information
Right.
has to have a carrier, which is they better feel love. I mean, if you're going to enter in a relationship with me and you want to be in love, but you're not bringing any love to the relationship, why would I want to love you?
Right.
You'd have to bring that. So, like, if your personality creates your personal reality, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, the present personality who's listening to this show has created the present personal reality called their life. So if they wanted to create a new personal reality, a new life, they would have to start thinking about what they were thinking about and change it. Starting to become conscious of their unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. Now here's the key. They have to look at the emotions that they've memorized that keep them anchored to the past and decide if those emotions belong in their future. So most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. In other words, a wealthy person doesn't feel lack. You can't bring lack into your future. You know, a sick person doesn't feel desperation. They feel wholeness. And so then, by re-identifying with the future, and then instead of your past-present reality, is very, very easy conversation to have. Mm-hmm. But actually doing it requires a tremendous amount of awareness. And that awareness means then that you have to stay conscious and pay attention to who you're being all the time. And you can't let any thought slip by your awareness that's going to cause you to return back to the old self. You can't begin to react emotionally to people and things in your life that cause you to feel like the old self. You can't talk and complain and blame and make excuses or go back to old habits and expect your future to show up. You have to maintain that state for a period of time so that your body catches up, because the body and brain live in the past. So it takes a certain amount of repetition and a certain amount of consciousness, a certain amount of will to finally arrive there. And I'm happy to say that it's possible.
Joe, what tips can you give some of our viewers that can't seem to get out of their own way? They mm-hmm. can't seem to admit or surrender to the process. Mm.
Well, number one, learn. Fill your brain with knowledge. Turn the TV off. Sit down and read a book or watch a video that's going to inspire you. Knowledge is the precursor to experience. The more knowledge you have, the more prepared you are for the event. And when you start losing track of your vision, it's because more than likely you're emotional. Because the moment you feel emotional, you can't see the future because you're looking at your future through the lens of the past. Get up in the morning, get out of bed, and take time for your precious self. You and I are a work in progress. And if we are not changing our brain and body in some way, priming it for the future, we're going to be very predictable the rest of the day, and we're going to be in our past. Take time for yourself every morning and ask yourself a simple question. One day, one lifetime, what is the greatest expression of myself I can be today? How would a great person think? How would they act? How would they feel? Can I teach my body emotionally how that future person is going to feel now? And make the deal with yourself that you're not going to get up from your meditation until you feel differently. If you do, then get up and maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, independent of any person, anything, or experience in your life, independent of any emotional addiction or habit in your body, and independent of time. And if you can, get ready, because something unusual is going to happen in your life. That's the law. And so when synchronicities and serendipities and coincidences begin to happen in your life, unexpected events like balloons showing up in windows to remind you that the divine is present, that's an indicator that you are literally now in a dance in this world between your free-willed consciousness and this consciousness that's controlling all of this. And when your consciousness every day merges with that consciousness, why not be bold enough to say to the creator, hey, creator, I took time out of my busy day to emulate you. I'm the son and daughter of God. I am emulating you as a creator. But here's the deal. I need a sign from you to let me know that you're real. But don't bring it in a way that I can expect, because if it comes in a way that I expect, it's nothing new. Rock my world. Drop a little crumb from the table and let me know that you're present so that I'm inspired to keep creating.
Let's see a red balloon fly by the window.
That's exactly what I said, yeah. That's the point. So then, when that starts happening to you on a regular basis, you're less prone to judge your coworker. You're less prone to get upset in traffic. You'll be the person going, because and when the mystical starts downloading data into your brain and you start having really profound experiences, there's only one thing you want to do, and that is to give. You cannot not give in that place. And you can never return back to business as usual, ever again. And so, is it worth the effort? I think so.
I think so too. Definitely do. That's why I'm here. So the past couple of years, you've been researching the effects of meditation on participants in the workshops using the brain mapping. Can you explain to our audience what the brain mapping, the results of the brain mapping have done? What have they produced?
Well, the only reason that we started measuring our students is because we were seeing phenomenological changes happening right during our events. People healing themselves of different diseases and conditions in real time. Now, when you're seeing changes happening like that, where someone in a wheelchair with MS stands up and walks across the room who hasn't walked in 10 years, what is causing those effects? In other words, genes are like Christmas tree lights. They're turning on and off all the time. And when they upregulate, they make healthier proteins. Proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body. When they downregulate, they turn off and they make cheaper proteins, right? So in effect, that person with MS upregulated genes for health and regeneration, and downregulated genes for disease and inflammation. Happened in real time. So if you're seeing that in real time, then it means that we have to start measuring. So we brought a team of scientists and researchers from all over the world. And we've done 7 events, as I said. We've done over 2,500 brain scans on our students. And why are we doing quantitative studies on the brain with a team of neuroscientists and technicians? Well, if we can get a group of people and measure their brains before an event, take them through 5 days of meditation, changing beliefs and perceptions, getting beyond themselves, changing their energy, the whole bit. And they have a healing from Parkinson's, or a healing from MS, or a healing from lupus. I want to know that it's not just in their mind. I want to know that it's in their brain. And then if we randomly select different people and we observe their brain during meditation, we should be able to then gather vital information about what's going on in their inner workings, and when they're there and when they're not. And if we can look for things like coherence, and if we can look for things like amplitudes and how fast they can go into a certain state and how long they can sustain that state, and we can measure what's going on and correlate it with their own experience, that's more information for me to teach transformation the next time. We've also, as I said, measured people's hearts. Why? Because we know that when the heart is coherent, the brain is coherent. And when the brain gets coherent, the heart gets coherent. And it's those 2 centers, where we have coherence in both centers, that we're at our best, because we start to experience wholeness. When you're whole, it's impossible to want. How could you want when you're whole? So we've also measured the energy of the room. Why? Because people are beginning to create coherent fields. The energy should be enhanced in the room. We've measured the energy around people's bodies. Why? Because if they are liberating themselves from those stress hormones and freeing themselves from the chains of those emotional addictions, they're going to go from particle to wave, from matter to energy, and they're going to release photons and release light, and we want to measure if they're doing that. We've measured the energy centers of their body, because that's how you program your autonomic nervous system. We've also measured epigenetic changes and changes in brain chemistry. And all of that information, I think in the last 3 years, I think we've made scientific history. As far as the brain goes, I was just in Phoenix before I got here with the team of neuroscientists and technicians. We looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brains. And we were moved to tears, actually, in a few cases, because we now know that when you're analyzing your life within some emotion that's bothering you, you will make your brain worse every time, because it's those very emotions that drive your brain further into higher and more aroused states. And since the emotion is a record of the past, the person's basically thinking in the past. They can't resolve the problem from the past. When they get beyond that emotion, that's when they begin to see the answer that they've been looking for themselves. We know that. We also know that when people are living with their attention on things and objects and people, and they're living by the hormones of stress, and they're obsessing about time and obsessing about their bodies, that they have very little effects or changes in their brain. We also know that when a person gets to the place where they are no body, no one, no thing, no where, and no time, that's the moment they literally are pure consciousness. Now, consciousness is what changes the brain. The brain never changes the brain. The program never changes the program. The personality never changes the personality. The ego never changes the ego. Matter never changes matter. It's only when a person becomes pure consciousness that consciousness with that energy is the epiphenomenon of matter. And so when people reach this elegant state where they disconnect from their body, that's when they can heal their body. When they forget about their life, that's when they can change their life. When they forget about that they're a woman or a wife or a grandmother or an attorney or a lawyer or a father or heterosexual or homosexual or vegetarian or a social security number or a name, a face, when they get beyond all of their elements that they identify with, that's the moment where they can begin to change their life or create some new time. And in fact, we've seen this enough times that I can say that you and I are at our absolute best when we get beyond ourselves. I don't know how else to say that. So, in the last 2 years, we've seen our students able to change their brainwaves and move into a meditative state in 2 seconds, in 4 seconds, in 5 seconds, in 9 seconds, in 12 seconds, in 20 seconds, in 30 seconds. Most people, it takes them a couple minutes to get there. Our students have developed the skill to get beyond their analytical mind. We've also captured amplitudes of energy in the brain that you will never see in a clinical setting or never see in the history of neuroscience. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, over and over again. Now, what do I mean by that? If you see a brainwave strip chart and you see little waves like this and you have the electrodes all over the brain, and you see like beta brain waves and you see alpha brain waves, the brain's slowing down, you see theta, the person's in twilight state, and when they're in delta, they're asleep, and then every now and then you see gamma, which is super consciousness. You see those waves kind of wiggle in a small amplitude. Over and over again, we see students, we're looking at their brainwaves. If you picture grabbing a handful of Crayola crayons and then just going like this, and up and down over the entire strip chart where you can't even see the waves, it just looks like a bunch of colors. There's no way for us to measure what's going on in their brain, so we've created another way to measure the effects. And so most people's brains, when they fire little networks of neurons, the energy in their brain is somewhere between 10 to 60 microvolts of energy squared. So 10 to 60 is normal. We're capturing 650,000 microvolts of energy, 1 million microvolts of energy,
Really?
2.5 million microvolts of
Wow.
energy, 4 million microvolts of energy. And what that means then is that the person is having a full-on sensory experience without their senses. Whatever's happening between their ears is more real than anything that's ever happened in their entire life.
Wow.
So if they were traumatized and abused and beaten, and the intensity and the energy of that event branded them neurologically and emotionally, and they can't get beyond it, when they're having that inner experience, and it is a complete mystical experience, and the amplitudes are that high, The energy from that experience inwardly is greater than any past trauma, and that's the moment experience rewrites the circuitry in the brain, rewiring themselves in 1 second, and then sending a new emotional signal to their body, and that is the moment the gene gets regulated, and it's like the past is literally washed away out of the body. Now, we've seen that now probably in 25, 30 cases now, where the amplitudes are extremely high. Now think about this. What would happen right now if you and I had our senses increased by 25%? If I could see 25% better or more acutely, and so could you could hear 25% better, you could smell, you could feel, and you could taste 25% better, you would have to say that if your senses were heightened to that degree, so would your awareness. So when a person's having a full-on sensory experience without their senses, what's really happening is their inner world now is becoming more real than their outer world. And as their senses are heightened and everything's more lucid and more enriched, that experience is real to them. And that's the moment then that consciousness begins to leave very profound footprints biologically. So we're seeing this over and over again, and now we're correlating the person's story, what just happened to you, with what's happening in their brain. Their subjective experience is being validated objectively. Mm-hmm. And the stories will move you to tears, and that person can't make their brain do that. It's happening to them. So the moment they're no longer a woman or a man, the moment they're no longer their body, the moment they're no longer an identity, the moment no longer connected to things or objects or places or time, that's the moment they're pure consciousness. Now, when that consciousness can surrender to the infinite consciousness of all that is, you've just taken your attention off the particle, off of matter, and you put it on possibility. When the brain and the nervous system captures a new stream of consciousness, that consciousness from that field is very self-organizing, and it has a very profound energy, a highly, highly profound energy. And that's the moment the person literally is now processing a quantum phenomenon in their brain. And so we've made scientific history in doing this because we can't find measurements anywhere. And we've invited neuroscientists to come and study our work. And while the person's having the experience, the neuroscientists are saying, oh, she's having a seizure. And I say to them, does she look like she's having a seizure? She's sitting there statuesque. And at the same time, she's wearing an HRV monitor. And if she was having a seizure, that heart would be going crazy. And her heart, for the entire hour, is in complete love, in complete coherence. She is enjoying, she doesn't want the moment to end. She wants it to last forever. She's caught up in a realm beyond space and time. And so we're doing a lot of great things.
Yes, you are. So now what happens to her after? I mean, does she need to continue when she comes out of her meditative state? Her life has changed. I mean, we know that. There's no way you can go back, just as you said. And what happens then? Does she continue to embrace the meditations? Does she go further? Does she want more?
Mm-hmm. Well, just think about this. Let's just demystify it. Let's just say we're talking about tennis or snowboarding. And you have a really great moment where you connect, and now you know how to backhand, or you now know how to carve on a snowboard. You're going to enjoy the experience, yeah? So, very, very interesting phenomenological changes have taken place. I've actually flown somebody to my house to talk to him one-on-one after this experience of 2.5 million microvolts of energy in his brain. And sometimes for 17 minutes. In the last event that we did in Germany, the amplitudes of energy were so high in this person's brain that in the next sentence, the next moment, the amplitudes were so high that in the next moment, there was no brainwaves reading at all. Flatlined.
Really?
And we thought, is he dead? But what happened was the machine wasn't built to calibrate that amount of energy. Frequency. So then it kind of picked up again, and then 10 minutes later, flat lines again after these high amplitudes. And we're sitting there with the hugest smile on our face because we were going, wow. So what's the relevance of that? Our spectrum of reality, perception-wise, is less than 1%. Now, this is not spiritual mumbo-jumbo. The light spectrum of all light, X-rays, gamma rays, infrared rays, ultraviolet rays, visible light rays, we're looking at the spectrum of ultraviolet. Look on a spectrum of physics, and you'll see a visible light spectrum this big, and then there's a huge spectrum. This is what we're seeing visible light-wise, this much. But there's information that's way beyond our senses. So then when you have a full-on sensory experience like that, that is very transcendent, very interdimensional, very abstract, you'd have to agree then, your brain could only perceive what it's wired to perceive. So now the person has a very transcendent experience, and their perception of reality, that spectrum, is broadened. Now they're seeing what other people don't see, because now it's wired in their brain and they can see it. So the stories that have taken place as a result of that, people have really had some pretty amazing moments in their waking day, because now their brain is wired to perceive reality differently.
And they're rewired.
Oh no, they're definitely rewired.
Definitely rewired.
In a matter of an instant. So like, here's a great example. So you come home and you see as a kid, you see your dog run over by a car, right? Traumatic event, yeah? The amplitude of that trauma brands circuits in your brain neurologically, and that's called a long-term memory, right? The emotion that you felt of grief and pain when you saw your puppy dead was enough for you to remember that experience and the emotion of how much you loved your dog. But when you have the divine move through you, and it's a profoundly mystical moment, and the amplitudes are thousands of times more than your experience of being run over, seeing your dog run over, you would have to admit then that you're going to be rewired. Those neurons are going to string into place in an instant, and they are going to be circuits then that begin to cause you to think neurologically within that new network of neurons and feel chemically within the new experience. And if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, you just changed your state of being.
Right.
Yeah.
Big time. Big time.